This is the story of a small group of shoes, which one day stumbled onto a magic portal that threw them into early mid-century Japan. Yeah, something like that. Okay, first of all, it's not a portal, it's actually a porch. And since we moved into the house, it naturally and spontaneously became our shoe storage. And as you can see, it's perfectly tidy and organized, but I decided to give it a bit of a facelift nevertheless. The inspiration for this project came from the fact that in Japan they keep the shoes at the entrance of the house. And therefore I wanted to replicate that feeling and possibly bring it a bit overboard with quite a few ideas that I kept adding and adding and adding to this project. In fact, even if this room is so small, the project became very long over time, and I decided to split it in two parts because there's just too much stuff for a single video. Now, to achieve the look and feel of a traditional Japanese home, the first thing to address were the doors. Currently they are plastered, but I wanted the corners to be covered in timber so that it would look like exposed timber beams. For this reason I'm splicing down some 6mm oak veneered plywood and I'm cutting the corners at 45 degrees to create a mitre. I will say straight away that this whole project is being haunted by bad material choices, and one of them was this plywood. It's very cheap. I got it at a bargain price and I thought it was only dirty, and that was the reason for the low price. But as I found out, the veneer is extremely thin. I never seen something so thin, and this will give me problems, as you will see later on. Anyway, stop moaning. I got loads and loads of pieces to cut and I actually miscalculated how much plywood I needed. Luckily I had some MDF left and therefore I'm joining the two pieces together. Problem is, some of the styles were too long for what I had left, so I had to join it up, and that's why you can probably spot some diagonal joints. You can also see how cheap the material was and how thin the veneer was, so as soon as I touched it in the joints, I cut through the veneer straight on. But at this point, you know what, I just decided to carry on. And partially to cover up this problem, partially because it was a proper choice that I made, I decided to give it a stain, and I'm using a spirit base rosewood color. I like this kind of stains because they are very easy to apply, they're very liquid, they soak in very quickly, and if you are fast enough they don't leave any marks and blotches. But here you can see again this cheap material in some spots. I probably had some filler because there are some light patches that I really don't like. I don't know if I'm gonna leave this project like this forever, or at some point in the future I'm gonna put my hands back on it, but for now I'm just carrying on, and I'm now gluing the corners so that I will create the shapes for the corner cladding and my fake beams. Once all the beams are ready, I can finally stick them in place. Since the adhesive is a bit thick, this is actually giving me the opportunity to correct any little wonkiness or out of squareness that I may have in the door frames. All I need is a spirit level and a bit of tapping until I'm happy that everything is perfectly square and level. Once the vertical beams are done, it's time to deal with the horizontal one. I mean, this is not structurally correct. The horizontal beam should go across, really. But my idea is that at some point, maybe in the future, when I have some more patience for this thing, I will add an extra cladding so that the top horizontal beam will protrude a little bit and go across the whole extension of the wall, and it will look then as if he's resting on the vertical beams. But for now it's time to peel off the tape and call this part done. And I can finally dive into the actual build. This is my project. The way I work is from plans and elevation, as I said in another video, and I don't actually make 3D drawings, but from all these plans I can then get my cut sheets with all the dimensions and the parts that I need. And this is me doing one of my favorite activity, which is lift heavy large items in the workshop, trying not to harm myself too badly. I wish one day I'll have an assistant doing all this for me, but I can't see that happening anytime soon. So for the time being, I'm trimming the biggest part with the track saw, and then I will finalize the sizes on the table saw, which is giving me more accurate, repeatable cuts. I gotta say, I don't mind using machinery and tools. I'm a gadget boy, and these are big, nice gadgets that make a lot of noise and sound very powerful and make you feel very cool. But this is a very stressing stage for me, because it's where I do most of the mistakes, mainly because either I measure things wrongly or I set my stops in the wrong spot for one reason or another. And you only find out when it's too late that you don't have enough material left because you messed up half of them. But be surprised, I didn't make any mistake this time. This build was actually very smooth from that point of view. The next favorite stage of mine is the one that you're seeing now, which is edge bending. I mean, if I could get rid of it altogether, that would be a dream. I'm using contact adhesive, and as I did find out later, it would have been better to use 2 coats on the MDF, because it's so absorbent that the first coat gets just soaked in, and I did have quite some problems sticking down the edge bending. I'm using 2mm oak edge, which is quite strong, so it tends to pull out quite easily, but you know, with a bit of hammering and a lot of patience, eventually I got through this whole pile of components. And after that, I decided that I was so brilliant that I could invent a new way of trimming the excess edge bending, and that was using the router table. I don't think this is the best system. I did get through it, and eventually I did manage to do the whole thing, and with a bit of sanding, all the parts were eventually done. When I say a bit of sanding, really this took me a day, and it's only quick when you see it in the video at super fast warp speed, not in reality. But I don't mind sanding. I don't know why. I kind of like it. Why do I like sanding and everybody hates it? Anyway. And since I was on a roll and using the router table, I also use it to carve the notches for the shelf pins. I don't think this is the right way of doing it either, because the piece was pulling apart and some of them were actually wider than they should have been because of that. But, oh, hey, I did it. If there's one thing I never liked about flat-packed furniture, is having all those holes that let you move the shelves at whichever level you need. I rather decide straight away where I want my shelves and have clean sides. I don't know, it's a small detail, and over time probably I may end up regretting it, because obviously you get different shoes with different heights and you may want to move the shelves. But I can always drill some more holes if that's the case, so I don't think it's a big issue, and for the time being it makes things look prettier for me. Now, next stage is the domino time! Is it really customary that one has to say that using domino is controversial? I mean, yes, I did say in another video I got mine second hand for a very good price, but I don't regret having it, and it makes my life easier. Nevertheless, if you are a new starter like I am, and if you are learning how to use it like I am, you can still make loads and loads of mistakes. So the fact that you are saving a lot of time cutting mortise and tenons doesn't mean that suddenly you can compete with old-time experienced woodworker. You still have to learn quite a lot of tricks before you can say that you just got it. This time around though, I did manage to drill them all in the correct place, so I'm very proud of myself. I'm not sure it's gonna last. I can't really say if I mastered the art of drilling domino tenons and mortises, but I got at least one lucky shot, and let me enjoy that, please. Because the space is very limited, these cabinets cannot have a backing because otherwise the shoes wouldn't fit. So I am stressing a lot about clamping it correctly and bracing it correctly, as you can probably see from my very concerned face. I don't really know what's going on with all those videos showing you how easy it is to use pocket screws. I mean, it's easy enough to drill them and it's very quick, I agree with that, but these things move a lot. If you don't clamp it properly, as soon as you move the screwdriver, the screw itself will try to pull the piece out of place and you will end up with wonky stuff. And that's why I'm using way too many clamps now here for this little piece, but spoiler alert, the bugger stayed in place and didn't move by a mil. So, success! And that's the first of the two cabinets done and dusted. All the braces are in place. I'm just checking for squareness, but all is fine. So I can finally pass to the second one. I did cut short on this one because it's more of the same. The difference is that although they're gonna look the same from the front, at the back there is a recess due to a column. So that's the reason why it has more pieces and more components at different levels. But other than that, it's just pretty much the same. So I will rush through this and pretend that what you're about to see never happened. Ouch! All I want to create at the bottom of the cabinet is a bit of a shadow gap, so I'm simply screwing a couple of strips, one at the front, one at the back, so it's going to be balanced, and that's pretty much it really. I'm keeping it very, very simple. None of it is going to be visible, so it's not going to look any nice, but it does the job. Struggling face time. Doors, we need doors. This is the second time this project will be affected by very poor materials choice. I decided that I wanted to use hardwood, oak, but I was in a hurry, so I went to a box store that actually sells live edge shelves, and I thought that that was going to be good enough, but it definitely wasn't, because as soon as I started cutting these pieces of material, it started bowing like a boomerang, and I mean immediately. But that's not gonna stop me, right? I need to finish this project. I really want to move on. I want to make other stuff. I want to learn new things. And I'm still very far from the end because there's a lot to do. So let's cut the rails and the styles for the doors, and then we'll deal with the decoration. And I mean, can you see how bold those pieces are? I mean, for real? That's what happens when you don't know what to buy and nobody can really tell you and advise you better. But I will get better, I promise. I promise. I know I will. I don't think I mentioned it in this video already, but I like to think that I can find easy and quick solution to make things just look correct, even if I'm taking serious shortcuts. And that's what's happening here. I'm trying to use the router table to cut the notches for the bars that will go inside the door, and that really didn't work. I didn't really like it. It was very, very sketchy, and therefore I decided that this was the time for me to do things traditionally, taking my time and applying all my craftsmanship, and that's what you're gonna see here. A quiet, relaxing footage of a craftsman using his immense patience and skill to craft beautiful things. No, no, really, that wasn't boring at all. I mean, I enjoyed it so much. I wish I could do more. I want to do it every day from now on. But it's now time to move on, and I can finally assemble the doors. And guess what? It's once again domino time! Every time I look at the footage, I realize that we do a lot of the same things over and over again, and yet the result is never the same because we create always new designs and new ideas from the very same materials and the very same techniques, and that's what makes it very exciting. So now the door frames are done, it's time to focus on the bars, and this time I'm using the router table properly. First to create the rounded edge on the bars, and secondly to create a rebate on the inside of the door frame. I now need to create the notches in the bars so that will fit inside the door frames. I started using the blade of the table saw, moving it, but I decided to switch to the dado stack because it was a bit quicker. And before the dado police jumps on me, yes, here in UK it's not allowed to use dado stacks in a business environment, but mine is a hobbyist workshop, and therefore it's perfectly fine. I need to take my risk and I take my gambles, but I feel confident enough that I can use it safely, so I don't see the problem really. All that done, I can finally stick the bars into the doors, and I mean, can you see how bold these are? It's really terrible. I should have stopped and get some more decent timber from a decent supplier, but that would have meant stopping the project for at least 2 weeks because you need to acclimate it and then you need to mill it again and do all the bars and all the rounded edges and all the notches and start over. I mean, it would have been a serious setback, and I really want to carry on. Uh, at the end of the day, I mean, this gives it a little bit of character. It makes it look like something that is a bit old and shoddy. And I could say that that's what I was going for, but that doesn't mean I'm proud of it. It just means that I can live with it. It's probably the last project that I'm cutting myself so much slack. I think I want to stop taking shortcuts from the next few projects on and really challenge myself. But for this time around, I can live with it. For the finishing, now that all the parts are ready, I decided to use Danish oil. I never used it before. I can say that I really like it. It's very easy to spread. It soaks in very quickly, differently from products like Osmo, where you need to do a lot of wiping to make sure that you don't leave excess. This simply soaks in, and basically you give coats after coats until it stops soaking in. In my case, because it was mostly veneer, I gave it 3 coats, and after each coat I will pass it with some steel wool, and that will make it very shiny and smooth. I mean, it's a pleasure to touch. That being said, when it came to the door, I had to realize that I really didn't like what I got. That didn't mean remaking it, but the inside edge was completely wrecked, as you've just seen, and so I decided to get a few more strips, still from the same funky wood, and add an exterior frame. So essentially I'm simulating what I should have done from the very beginning, which is build a frame with the bars and then add it to the door, rather than making all at once like I did. You live and learn, and this is the last piece that goes in. It covers pretty much all the mistakes, and nobody will know except all my millions and millions of viewers here on YouTube. I should have used traditional pivot hinges because it's a pretend period piece of furniture really, but I decided to use concealed hinges because they work better for what I was trying to achieve and the room that I have available. Besides that, now that I have all my little jigs, the fact that I can install them without flaws and smoothly makes me feel like the best woodworker on the planet. And no, I'm absolutely not stressed here because it took me half an hour to fit that door. Absolutely not. All went well. All went absolutely great. And I'm sure you saw this coming. It's time for some more sanding and oiling so I can finish the doors too, and everything can eventually go together. I wanted the doors to be breathable, and I decided to use some fabric, so I'm just stapling inside the rebate, and I will then trim the edges, which proved way more difficult than it should have been, and I had to try quite a few things. I first went with a very sharp knife, which I mean, it didn't really work at all. Then I decided to use scissors, and that really chewed them on so badly that I mean, it was hard to look at. And then I decided to use a naked blade just with my hands, and that seemed to work initially, but didn't last very long, and eventually I had to ask my wife for a proper tool, and yes, she had this wheel, which is absolutely perfect, and it does what is intended to and gives a very sharp cut. Now that I watch it, I still think that I should have made a separate frame for the fabric to apply more cleanly, but hey, I've done it, so please leave me alone. For the handles, I got some vintage knobs because I really like to salvage this kind of stuff, and this looked quite Japanese and a bit Art Deco, so very, very fit for the purpose and actually go very, very well with the panels. The cabinets were a very snug fit into place. I had to wiggle them a lot, but I mean that's pretty much what I was going for. I didn't want any shadow gap, and I didn't want them to be loose. And in fact, I didn't have to secure them because they're never gonna come out of that. The other one was a bit smoother, but not that much. So yes, I mean. It wasn't too bad anyway. They did fit. They did go exactly where I want them to. At least two-thirds of the top are not visible because of what's going on top, and therefore I'm just using some MDF and I'm securing with some screws. At the front, on the other end, I will have some solid oak, and this just slides into place with a couple of dominoes into the MDF, but left pretty much alone and free to move. I have some screws at the bottom as well into the brace, but those are slotted so the wood can move. I don't expect a lot of movement, but it should be enough just not to break. As you can see, I'm not even adding glue to the dominoes. I really want it to be free to move, but on the other end, this will give me permanent alignment between the oak and the MDF, which is all it needs. It can't slide out too much because it's properly notched into the vertical beams. And that's the cabinets done and dusted. I mean, they're not perfect. You can see most of the blemishes from the inside, but there's some on the outside as well. But even with the raggedy rug and the wonky wood, they still have character and people like them. I do like them. They're not for clients, so nobody's paying for it other than me. And well, this is a sneak peek of what you will see in part 2 with what's going on the top section. So see you next time, and if you wish, I mean, like and subscribe. Thank you.